Yeah, I think I forgot to record this, so I'm just gonna start recording. Okay, so if I were to do this, so I'm just gonna copy this file's absolute path, and then I'm gonna go into my browser, then colon / and paste. Yeah, so this is, yeah, it should be like displaying the content of this HTML file. So the way you can know that is if you were to just type in, let's say, a paragraph tag, which stands for like, which is used for displaying like paragraphs. And I were to just type in hello world, and you need to like save this. So on Mac, you can do Command A and Command S, and on Windows you can do like Control S. And then if you go back to your browser window, and you need to refresh this page for it to like be updated, like for it to like update the changes. So if I were to refresh it, as you can see, now it's displaying hello world. And if I were to just inspect this by right-clicking and clicking on inspect, and then if I can select this icon over here and just like click on this, I can see that I am actually using a paragraph tag to display this. Yeah. So let's go back to the slides. Okay. So let's go over the HTML tag syntax. So HTML tag is also referred to as element. So when I say element, I'm actually like referring to the whole, I guess like the whole, like the tag plus the content inside. So element names are surrounded by angle brackets. So normally they come in pairs, but some elements just come with like single angle brackets without like a pair. Yes, someone asked in the chat that are these slides available later? Yes, I actually like emailed you guys the slide, but if you want to have access right now, you can go to our website and click on events, and you can click here to get the slide, and you can just like click on download. So yeah, everything is posted. Yep. Yeah. So some of the tags that like close themselves are line break tag and also image tag. So for those tags, we don't need to include any content inside. Yeah. So this is like the basic structure. You create a HTML element by first entering a brackets, and you specify the tag name, and inside you enter the content, and you end it with another closing tag. So over here we have a heading 1, and it says welcome to my site. Yeah. So one thing you might have noticed is this doc type text at the top of your HTML file. So what that is so it's not actually a HTML tag. It's more of a declaration that tells your browser like what version of HTML you're using, so that your browser can properly render it and read your website or web page. And this is the official doc type of HTML version 5. So every time you create an HTML file, you must start that with this doc type declaration here. So some other really important tags are HTML. So HTML tag is basically defines the whole HTML document. so this should, like you should you should use this right after you enter dog type, and so this should like nest the whole like everything inside. So after you create like HTML tags inside, you can create a header tags, like header tag. So this tag basically defines like um, you can like enter things like meta information of your web page or the style sheet. So it basically contains like special elements that instructs your browser where to find the style sheet, and also provide some other information that are actually not displayed as the output over here. And like everything that is like that you see on the web page is contained inside the body tag. So you add the body tag after you've entered the header tag. So body tag basically contains like HTML elements that relates to the document's content, which is what is shown inside your browser window. Yeah. So this is the basic structure. You start with a doc type declaration, and then you enter your HTML. So over here we should have had a like header tags, but if we yeah, so after that, then we include the body tag, and inside the body you enter whatever like page content that you want to include. Okay. Yeah. So so over here we have a simple HTML file, and inside the head tag we actually include a information about this page, which is the title of the page. And inside the body, we include a header one, and followed by, and we entered, like we put a paragraph tag after that. So let's just quickly go over that. So if I were to like change the title, this title tag, like the content of this title tag to, let's say HTML cheat sheet, and if I were to save this, and if I go back to my browser window and refresh, if you look closely, you notice that the title of this page, which is displayed over here, has changed to what I entered just now. So this is how you can see the title of a web page. Yeah. And I can also include a header one to says header one text. And if I refresh this, you can see it on your browser window. So one shortcut when creating these tags is that you can just like type in the tag name. So for example, I want to create a paragraph element, and after you type in, you can click like on your keyboard, you can click on the tab key. So if you do that, it should just like create the tags on its own. So you can save lots of time just by like typing in your HTML element name and then just clicking up on the tab key on your keyboard. So this is how I was able to like create these very fast. Yeah. So let's go back to the slide. So there's a distinction between HTML element. So one of them is how much of the page width the element is going to take up. So we have inline elements, which only takes up the necessary width, and they do not start on a new line. And we also have block level elements. So block level elements starts on a new line, and they take full width available. So here's a visual representation of inline versus block level elements. So as you can see, each block level element over here is taking up the whole width of the page, and on the other hand, the inline elements only take up the necessary width, and they like collapse and like adjacent to each other. And some examples of block level elements are H1 paragraph tag, and some examples of inline elements are span and image and A tag. So here's an example. So over here we have a paragraph. So paragraph is a block level element, so it is starting on the new line instead of starting right after this heading 1. And inside this paragraph, we also have a strong tag, which basically makes the text bold. And this is a inline text because it's not starting on the new line, and it's only taking up the necessary width. And same goes for the emphasis tag. Yeah. So someone on the chat asked, we don't have to put quotes around the string literals. Could you explain like what you meant by that? Like, yeah, like you can unmute yourself. Like if you mean like the content of the like the content of the element, you don't have to put a quotation around them, but the place that you need to include quotation is when you specify an attribute, which I'll talk about over here. Yeah, so here's the quotation. Like each HTML element has their own unique tag attributes. So all tags can have attributes, and attribute is something that provides information about an element, and it is placed within the starting tag. So not the ending tag. You should only include them at the starting tag. And it is structured as a key value pairs. So for example, this is a HTML attribute called ID. So its key is ID, and it has a value of some ID. So whenever you enter the value, you need to surround it with some with quotation marks. So over here we have a paragraph element, and inside the starting tag we included a attribute called class, which is used for like CSS styling, and we gave it a value of important, and then the content goes between the pair of tags, and we end it with an ending tag. So here are some like really commonly used HTML tags. So for the primary structure of the web page, you have HTML, you have head, and you also have body tag. And inside the header tag, you have the title, which is like the title of the page. And you also have meta tag, which specifies information that are useful for like Google search. Like you can enter some keywords of your web page, so it is like more easily found on like Google search. And you can also include link elements by like linking your external CSS or JavaScript files. And in terms of structural elements, we have block level elements. So block level elements span the whole width of the web page, and we have paragraph, we have line break. So and we also have header 1 to header 6, and we also have UL, which stands for unordered list. So it's basically like bullet points, and we also have ordered list, which stands for like numeric list. And we also have this A tag, which is used for creating links. And we also have image tag, img tag, which is used for adding images. And the most commonly used tag in HTML is definitely div. So div is basically like a wrapper. You can think of it as a box. And the only styling, like the default styling that it has is a display block. So it's basically a block level element that doesn't have any content. So yeah, you usually use div whenever you want to like group things together. Yeah. And for the inline elements, we have M, which makes the text italic. And we also have I, which is used for adding icons. And we also have strong element, which basically makes the text bold. And I think B also makes it bold, but yeah, I don't remember this being used a lot. Same goes for Q. And block code basically makes the text have a quotation. And span is the sibling of div, which basically has a styling of display inline. So you usually want to wrap some kind of content inside span if you want to make it an inline element. Yeah. So besides the regular HTML elements like paragraph and tags, we also have a type of elements called semantic tags. So semantic basically means, I think it's defined as meaning. So semantic element describes describes a HTML element that basically has a unique place in the document. So if you think about a regular blogging page, we have a header, we also have a navigator. So usually you should try to wrap these different kinds of features of a web page inside these semantic tags, just so that the Google search or your browser can properly render them and display the necessary information to the client user. Yeah, and we also have a side for sidebar navigation, and we also have a footer. So now we're just gonna create our HTML cheat sheet, but if you, for some reason, if you couldn't follow along, you can also go to this GitHub repos and check out the final version. And I also uploaded the slideshow, the PDF copy of the slideshow over here. So you can always go back, and I'll upload the Zoom recording after the meeting. But with that being said, let's get started. So so you should have this HTML file under this directory. Give me 1 second. Okay. So let's just start by creating some heading text, heading elements. So yeah, also in HTML, you can make a comment by typing in a bracket and then double dash, and then just your comment, and you can close it with a double dash and then ending brackets. Yep, like angle braces. Yeah. So this is how you make comment inside HTML file. So let's just create a heading 1 text. So if I were to save this, and if I refresh my browser, as you can see, it created this really large text. And if I want to make a smaller text, I can use H2 element. So this is heading 2, and I'm just going to create more of them. So this is heading 3, this is going to be heading 4, and this is heading 5. And you can create heading tags until heading 6, which is the smallest. So let me update these. So if I were to save this and go back to my browser, so this is how it is displayed. And if I were to click on this icon and select each element, I can take a look at its default styling. So if you take a look at on your right, you basically see the default stylings used for this H1 element. So it is a block level element over here, and it also has a font size of 2M, which I'll describe in the next meeting. And it also has some other styling properties. Yeah. And so heading 1 is 2M, but if you hover over heading 2, it has a font size of 1.5M. So it is smaller. Yeah. So this is how you create the heading text. But you can also create a paragraph. And also a shortcut to create a comment on HTML is on Mac, you can do command // which is the question mark key. And then Windows, you can do control plus // which is also the question mark key. So if I do that, it basically creates the comment tag, and then I can just type in my comment. So it's going to be paragraph. And I'm going to type in the name of the tag, which is paragraph, and I'm just going to type in tab, which automatically creates the starting and closing tags for me. And then I'm just going to create some dummy content. So if you're using WebStorm, and if you type lorem, and if you tap your tab key, you also need to enter some kind of numbers. So I'm just going to enter 50, and if you type your tab key, yeah, that's weird. It should have created some dummy content. Interesting. But I can also just go to lorem ipsum and just copy this over. Okay. Then if I were to save this and then refresh my page, as you can see, it created this paragraph. Right now, it is much bigger just because I'm zooming in on my browser window, but usually it is much smaller. Yeah, so this is how you create a paragraph. Let's see, and we can also create a link. So I'm going to reformat this quickly. So if you go into your code top menu, and you can click on reformat, which basically reformats this file. So inside this paragraph, I'm going to create a link element. So to create a link element, you type in, it has the name of A. So you can just type in A and then type tab key on your keyboard. And then it automatically creates this attribute called href, which is unique to link elements. So you basically put your URL inside this href, whether it be absolute URL or relative. So I'm just gonna, let's see, Lorem Ipsum website. Yeah, so inside the tags, you can enter the content, and then I'm just gonna copy paste this website and then paste that over here. And then you can save this. And if I were to refresh my browser window, as you can see, now it created a link. So this is how you create a link. And if I were to click on it, it redirects me to this website. But if I want to open up a new browser window or browser tab, what I can do is I can specify another attribute that is specific to a link element, and it is called target. So if you give it a value of target blank underscore blank, and then save it, and if you go back and refresh your browser tab, and now if I were to click on it, it should open up a new browser tab. And yes, it did that. Okay, cool. Okay. Yeah. So let's go over how to create lists, whether it be like bullet points or numeric lists. So I'm just going to create a comment by using a shortcut, and I'm going to type in command /, and then I'm just going to give it a comment of this. And then if you want to create a bullet list, like bullet points, you can create a HTML element of UL, which stands for unordered list. And you can type tab key on your keyboard. And inside the unordered list element, you can type in list item. And you can, so LI stands for list item. And then I'm going to give this, specify this as item 1. And I'm going to just copy paste this 3 more times. Okay. So if I were to save this and refresh my browser tab and go back, now it created some bullet points. So if I were to hover over this and check out the styling, so LI element has a display of list item, which is different from, I guess, inline and block level element. And it also has some this list style type of disk, which is what you see over here, this bullet points. Yeah. So you can also create numeric lists. So for numeric lists, you can use the tag of OL, which stands for unordered list. Sorry, ordered list. Yeah. And you can create list elements, list items. So let's say list item 1, 2, 3. And if I were to save this and refresh my browser tab, as you can see, now it created a numeric list. Let's see. And you can also create a line break. So if I were to have a paragraph over here, oh yeah, so yeah, now I learned why it wasn't working before. So you need to do lowercase. So if you were to type in lorem, lowercase, and then type in some number, and then click on type the tab key on your keyboard, it should create some dummy text. And then if I were to have some space between these two, the list and the paragraph, I can add some line break. Let's give it one more. And if I were to save it, and if I go back, yeah, so now it basically created some space. And if I were to inspect the structure of this page, and if I were to, let's see, over this, yeah, so now you can see that we actually have some line break here. Okay. You can also create like input elements on HTML. So the way you do that is by first creating a form element. So inside the form, I'm going to create a div, which is basically as a box that you want that I'll use to like group different things. So I'm gonna group this input, and it will have a label of, let's say, first name. And then under that, to create a text input, you basically use the input element. And if I type in input and type my tab key on my keyboard, it automatically populates this with a type attribute of text. And you also need to specify what this label is for. And you also need to like give this input a name, preferably, because it's usually used for selecting the specific input when you process this form, like getting this data and like sending that to the server. So I'm just gonna give it a name of first name, and actually I think this is used for ID. Let's see, first name. Yep. Yeah, so whenever you create an input, you should try to also create an ID, which is unique for each HTML element. Yeah, so ID basically like identifies this element like inside this HTML file. And after you've done that, you can specify, you can enter this attribute for which specifies like which input this label element is for. So if I were to save this and go back to my browser window, as you can see, now it created this input element. So just to display this in the middle, I'm gonna create some space. So I'm just gonna create a div element, and I'm gonna give it some styling. So let's just create some height. It's gonna work. Yeah. Okay, cool. So now you can basically like enter some kind of text to this input. Yeah, so input element is like really commonly used in all kinds of like websites and web application. So you can also create different kinds of input. So if we want to capture a user's email, maybe, so in that case, you can give it a type of email. And this is going to be email. Let's also change the content. Okay. And if I were to go back, now I can type in my email. And the reason it has a unique type is because like it is really useful when you want to like validate this field. So if you want to like if you give it a attribute of required, which doesn't need to like have any value, and then like before you can actually like submit this form, you have to type in the email, and if you try to like submit it without typing a valid email, it's gonna give you an error. So it is it's basically a browser side, like client side validation. Okay, let's see. So if you want to like capture large amounts of text, maybe like a paragraph, in that case, you would want to use a different kinds of HTML element, which is called text area. So Yeah. So like for this element, you can type in some attributes of like columns, like number, like which basically specify the height, and also rows which specify the width. And we can also give it some ID. So let's say text body. Um, yeah, and we can also give it a label. Yeah, so basically create this box which you can like enter some kind of content that spans like multiple lines. And you can also give it a placeholder attribute. So we can give it a value of enter some text ... And then if I were to save it and refresh my browser window, it basically displays this text. And if I were to click on this box and start typing, it's going to disappear. Yeah. Does anyone have any question so far? Let's see. So yeah, so there isn't really like a really strict standard. So someone asked the question in the chat that asked like, is there a standard for indentation in HTML? So there isn't really like a strict indentation. So if you were to like not indent this, indent these child elements, it's totally okay. Your browser is going to render them fine. But like for readability, like it is recommended that you indent HTML elements with 2 spaces or a tab. So in this file, I think I'm indenting them with like 3 spaces, but it is recommended that you do that with like 2 spaces. And same goes for JavaScript files. But yeah, yeah. So another question in the chat, could you go over that one more time? Could you like, so which one do you want me to go over again? You can like unmute yourself or type in the chat. Okay, cool. Let's see. So another input element that you can create in HTML is a list of options. So let's say we want to capture someone's grade level, then we can use a HTML tag called select. And then if I type in my tab key on my keyboard, like inside the select, I can add some options, and you can use the option HTML element. And each option is going to have some value. So for the content, I'm going to say freshman. Let's copy this 4 more times. And you also need to give it a value so that when you send this form to the server, this is the value that it is actually going to capture and not the content. Give the ID of grade level. And let's specify this labels for attribute. And let's also give this a name of grade level. Okay, so if I were to save this and refresh my browser tab, now we have a select field, and we can select from multiple options, like from freshman to senior. Yeah. Let's see. And I think you can also specify the default. Maybe no, but yeah. Let's see. Yeah, you can also create a date input. So for that, you use the input element, and you basically specify the type with a date. So let's see. Date. Let's give it an ID of dates. Okay. And if I go back to my browser window, now I can enter some date, and when I try to like capture the value that the user entered, it's gonna be a value of like type date, and you can like reformat it in different ways, like just getting like the day of the month, or the year, etc. And you can actually create. So lastly, you can create a submit button to this form. So when the user clicks on this button, you may want to send along, like you may want to like capture the values that the user entered, and then send it to a server. So if I were to save this and refresh it, I created a button. And you can also give it an attribute of type and give it a value of submit, which means that when you click on this button, it performs the action of like submitting this form. And you can specify like what kind of action you want to take based on when this form is submitted. So we have a submit event listener, and you can like call sign some kind of function with like JavaScript, which we're not going to go over in this meeting. Let's see. So let's just go over like one more thing before we wrap up. So another common element that you use is the image. So you can create an image element with img, and you need to specify the source of the image, as well as some alternative tags, which is displayed when the image isn't found or shown for some reason, which is a really good practice. So I'm just going to Google some random bird image. Okay. So I'm just going to copy the link. Okay. And then I'm going to paste that inside the source attribute. Yeah, it's really long, but it's fine. And actually, let's reformat this file. Okay. And for the alt, I'm just going to describe what this image is. A bird. Okay. So if I were to refresh it, yeah, for some reason it is not loading this image. But as you can see, if the image isn't found, it's going to display the alt text. But yeah, let's maybe let's open this in a new tab, and then let's copy this. Let's try this again. Yes. So we were able to render this bird image. Yeah, I think the reason is because I'm not getting the copying the cracked link. So if you were to right click on the image and maybe open that up in a new browser tab, and then copy this one instead, I think it should render it. So we can also specify how much space this image should take up. So for the image HTML element, it has a attribute of width. So if you just enter 100, it's gonna take up just a little space instead of the whole space. Yeah, but that's basically most of the most commonly used HTML elements that you'll encounter. So HTML is mainly for structuring your website. So you should wrap your content inside HTML element just to give it the proper structure. And during our next meeting, we're going to cover CSS, which is a style sheet language. And with that, we can make our website much prettier by changing up the font size, the color, the background color, etc. But that's pretty much it. I hope you guys got learn the basics of HTML, but you can also always go back to the slideshow and add this Zoom recording. And I'll also share some online resources with you guys on Discord. Yeah. So someone on the chat said, "Can we see your cheat sheet again?" Yeah. So we can actually see the final version of this cheat sheet by visiting this link, which is a GitHub repost. And if you click on this file called finalversion.html, you can actually see this, see the cheat sheet, the final version. Yeah. And you can also find that on our website under the events page and clicking on this meeting slide. Yeah, that's it. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. But if you have any more questions, feel free to hang on and I'll try to answer them. But yeah.